Hey y'all, I wanted to do a different type of video for you today. I've been getting a lot of questions on social media about my acting, and then also a lot of people looking for advice when it comes to acting. I'm also the owner of my own business, Merrifield Consolidated, and a lot of people are wondering how I'm able to do so much and what are some tips that I might have because they want to do some of those things themselves. I've always wanted to kind of play the older brother, and I wanted to take the opportunity to give you some advice that I had to learn the hard way that hopefully you can implement in whatever way, whether that's your career, whether that's acting, or whether you're in school. So there's four main things I want to talk about that I learned the hard way that I hope can help you get a head start. The first one is make sure that you're working with the right people. It's pretty easy for us to figure out what industry we want to work in, whether we want to do acting, whether we want to be in a corporate job, whatever that might be. But it's a lot harder to make sure you find the right company and the right peers to work with. Several years ago, I was kind of in a dead end job because I was given a lot of promises and told I could move up when there wasn't actually an opportunity to do that. Well, I was working there for over a year and no opportunities had presented themselves. And I remember I was reading a book called Good to Great. And basically, Good to Great is about making sure when you're a business owner, finding the right people to work for you as employees, because you can't take your business from good to great if you're not working with the right people. Well, as someone working in a dead end job at the time, I thought of it in the opposite way. As an employee, I need to make sure I find the right employer or the right person to work with who really can deliver on their promises, who really can help lead and grow you as a person, so you can have a healthy and happy career, because your career is going to make up the majority of your life, whatever you choose to do. So I quit that job. I found a different job that paid better, that had better benefits, and most importantly, had a defined path of success. And that's really important. The paycheck in your first job or even in your second job is less important as the defined and actual path of success that you can follow through. Not promises, but something that can be seen and followed. The other thing I realized is if you're not overworking, if you're not putting in overtime, working 50 to 60 hours, honestly, 60 to 70 when you first start out, you're doing something wrong and you don't really deserve to succeed. Everyone's out there working really hard these days. Everyone's got talent. But what I realized was if you're willing to put in the sweat and the effort, that trumps everything else. My wife and I got married very young, and she got pregnant very young, very early in our marriage. It wasn't a plan, it just kind of happened. And it was a tough thing because we were living in a one-bedroom apartment on one income, and we couldn't afford to have a baby. Well, I decided right then when we discovered she was pregnant to work as hard as I possibly could. So what I did was I started working starting at 4:30 a.m. and I'd usually work till 6 p.m. at night. And I'd work about 60 plus hours per week. It was really hard, and basically, I'd get off work, have dinner, help my very pregnant wife, and then go back to sleep and start over again. I ended up gaining 20 to 30 pounds. I started losing some of my hair. Thankfully, it's coming back. But it was a really difficult thing. But it was a very important thing to do as well. Because as the man, as the person who's in charge of my household, it was my responsibility, no one else's, to provide. So when it comes to, that, I learned that as I put in more and more overtime at my job, I was being considered for promotions. I was being considered for raises because they saw my dedication. At the dead end job I was at before, they would always talk to me about, Philip, you need to be willing to do whatever we want you to do, even if it doesn't fit the job description that we hired you to do. And at the time, I had a problem with that because there was no benefits, there was no real promise, and there was no pay to go along with that. And I basically was not willing to do extra when I was not being given extra. And I'd actually really recommend that for you as well. Make sure that whatever you're doing, you're able to put that full drive, the full 60 hours in. And if what you're doing in your current job won't allow that because there's no reward system, then work 40.0 hours there, get your full time, and then get a second job. The third thing that I learned was it's really important to communicate well. You need to have two things to be successful: production, bringing about actual value, and then also the communication piece. And as a man, it was a lot harder for me to realize this than it was for my wife. I had to learn to match people's pace and their styles. Some people just want a phone call. Some people just want a text. Some people want a video call. Some people like to talk quickly. Some people like to talk slowly. It was really hard for me to match other people's styles. So my communication would break down with people all the time. This would create a lot of miscommunication. It would cause people to feel really resentful simply because they were not willing to communicate the way I wanted to communicate, and I didn't realize how important their method of communication was. Especially when you're starting out, that's something you really have to be sure that you're doing. The last thing is, and I know that this one's a really tough one, if you live in the United States of America, you do not have the right to live in poverty. I know things are tough, trust me. I worked a ton to make sure that I could provide for my family. You know, it was actually easier for my great-grandmother living in the Great Depression to buy a house than it is for me in the Dallas-Fort Worth in 2022 to buy a house. That's statistics, look it up. I know that as someone who saved up and bought a house for their family, for his family. So I understand it's really tough right now when people are getting inflation-adjusted raises at the end of the year of 4% when inflation was something like 12% last year, and you have to wait the entire year. That's really tough. Tough luck, you have to deal with it. You have to be the last person on the line. You have to be the person who's willing to say, the buck stops with me. And I know that that's tough, and my family struggled growing up as well. But the bottom line is if your job cannot pay the bills, you need to get a second job. Amazon Warehouse is always hiring for $14 an hour, and if you work enough hours, that'll cover your bills. These are 4 things I learned the hard way. Let me just say one more thing. I'm someone who's wanting to become an actor full-time, and I'm working up to that. That's my goal. I'm still putting in 45 to 50 hours a week at my job, and I'm still helping out with my family. So I'm working all the time. But I'm showing people that I'm willing to do that hard work. And it's paying off. I was in a film a month ago, and when you're on a film set, there's a lot of hurry up and wait. You know, you're in a scene, then you wait an hour, then you're in another scene, then you wait another hour. And what I noticed my peers were doing were sitting in the break room, in the green room, looking at Instagram, reading a book, talking to one another. What I decided to do was to help out. So I was playing a soldier, and I had my full soldier's uniform, cap on, gun at my hip, and I was walking around with a strike set. I was tearing down wallpaper, putting up wallpaper, moving tables, moving chairs. I was helping them with setting up everything. I didn't actually help them with the cameras, but I helped move all their cameras into the room and out of the room. You know what? It really meant a lot to them. It really made a good impression, and actually that company is considering me for a lead role in 2023. Who knows if that will happen, but having the willingness to put in the work once you've already found the right people to work with is absolutely essential to being successful. So I hope you enjoy those 4 points. Again, make sure you're on the right train, you're working with the right people before you give them all of your effort. And then give them all of your effort, work as hard as you can, communicate with them so that there is no excuse for them not to reward you, not to work with you. And remember, I know it's hard, especially when you're pursuing a passion that doesn't pay anything for a long time, but you have no right as an American. You have no right if you're a father, if you're a brother, if you're a husband, no right to not provide for your family who's in need. Trust me, these are 4 things I learned the very hard way, and I'd love to help you see around that corner. All right, I hope you enjoyed this different type of video. Let me know if you like this type of video because, you know, I got a lot to say. And otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day.